Hi, I'm Vela. On my birthday, I got a bank alert, minus $72,000. No warning, no explanation, just a memo. Happy B-Day gift for Lily's new ride. Lily, that's my sister. When I called my dad, all he said was, she needed a car. No apology, no remorse. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. It was a pattern. A quiet betrayal that started long before this. My name used, my credit tied, my silence expected. But what happens when the quiet one stops playing along? What do you do when your own family sees you as their backup plan, and nothing more? The morning sunlight filtered weakly through my half-closed blinds, casting thin, golden stripes across the hardwood floor. I wasn't expecting balloons or a surprise breakfast, just maybe a happy birthday text. That would have been enough. It was a Tuesday after all, and I had work emails to catch up on. Still, I allowed myself a moment, just one. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, hoping, not for fanfare, but for a simple acknowledgement. Something human, something from them, nothing. No notifications from my family, no missed calls, not even a passive-aggressive meme from Sable, which was her version of affection. Just 3 spam emails and an app notification from my bank. I opened it out of habit more than concern. I'd been diligent, saving for a down payment on a condo outside the city. I didn't eat out much. I budgeted, tracked every expense in a spreadsheet so tidy it could impress the IRS. So when I saw it, red numbers blinking on the screen, my first thought was, glitch. But the number didn't move. $72,000 since, and beneath it, the transaction memo. Happy B-Day gift for Lily's new ride. Lily. That was Sable's middle name. Only our dad called her that anymore. The phone slipped from my fingers and landed face down on the blanket beside me. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. My legs went cold. My stomach flipped like I'd swallowed ice. I forced myself upright and sat on the edge of the bed. The sound of my own breathing felt too loud, too fast. I pressed both palms against my thighs to keep them from shaking. Surely this was a mistake, a fraudulent charge, a hack, anything but what it looked like. I reopened the app, checked the transaction history. The money had moved out at 2:12 a.m., processed through one of the shared accounts I'd set up for emergency use only. The same account I'd told Dad about 3 years ago when Mom was sick and the hospital bills piled up. I hadn't touched it since. There was only one person who had access, and he didn't even bother to change the nickname on the transaction. I called him. The phone rang twice before I heard the sound of laughter, glasses clinking, music in the background. Dad answered with a grunt and a lazy chuckle. Vela, what's up? My voice came out small. Dad, my account. Someone transferred out over $70,000. Did something happen? There was a pause. Not long. Just enough for the air between us to shift. Yeah, your sister needed a car, he said. We took care of it. I blinked. Took care of it? With my money? Don't be dramatic, he scoffed. She's starting her own thing, branding herself. It's not like it's gone forever. She'll pay it back. I stood up. My heart was racing now, and the room started spinning in the way it does when reality suddenly flips on you. You used my emergency fund. For a car? It's a birthday gift. For your sister. From the family. You'll be fine. I didn't respond right away. There was nothing left to say. I hung up without another word, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the phone again. That's when it hit me. Not just the betrayal, but the absurdity of how normal he made it sound. Like it was some favor I should have expected to be asked for. Except they hadn't asked. They'd just taken. I walked into the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and sat down at the small table by the window. The city was already awake outside. Buses honked. A dog barked 3 floors down. But everything inside me went quiet. I opened my laptop and pulled up my savings spreadsheet. Color-coded tabs. Monthly charts. That account had taken me 8 years to build. It wasn't just a number. It was every extra shift I'd taken, every vacation I didn't go on, every Friday night I skipped out on dinner because I was saving for something real. And just like that, It was gone. Not because of a medical emergency, not because someone's life depended on it, but because my sister, who hadn't held a job longer than 6 months, wanted to brand herself. I closed my eyes. I saw the birthday 4 years ago, when I made my own cake because everyone forgot. The year after that, they all went to Palm Springs without me because I had to work anyway. Last year, they sent a group selfie captioned family time. I wasn't even tagged. I told myself it didn't matter. But today, it mattered. I stood up and walked to the living room. There was a photo on the bookshelf. Me, Dad, and Sable, taken years ago at the lake house. Everyone looked happy, like we belonged. I picked up the frame and turned it face down. Then I sat back at the kitchen table, stared at the glowing screen, and whispered to myself, "Not again." I didn't cry, not yet. Instead, I opened a new folder on my laptop, named it Truth. I didn't sleep much after that call. I tried. I shut my laptop, turned off my phone, dimmed the lights, even changed into my softest t-shirt, the one with the tiny bleach stain near the hem. But none of it helped. His voice kept circling back. Not the words, but the tone. Flat. Dismissive. Like I'd called to nag about forgetting to take out the trash, not that he'd just wiped out my life savings. At some point, maybe around 3 a.m., I picked up my phone again, not because I expected anything different, but because sometimes pain makes you check the same wound twice. I opened the family group chat. It had been mostly quiet over the last few weeks, with the occasional blurry photo from my aunt's garden or forwarded motivational memes that made me cringe. Still, I hoped, against every lesson I'd learned, not to feel completely erased. As the messages loaded, my screen lit up with a photo I didn't recognize. It was Sable, standing in front of a brand new black SUV, throwing up peace signs and blowing kisses at the camera. Dad stood behind her with a champagne glass in hand, wearing that smug half-smile he always pulled when he wanted credit for something he didn't fully understand. The caption read, "Thank you, Daddy. Best surprise ever. Couldn't do it without you." Comments rolled in from the usual suspects. "So happy for you, girl. You deserve it, Queen. That's one fine ride." Heart emojis, fire emojis. Even a dancing bear gif from my cousin Travis, who still lived in his parents' basement. Not one word from anyone about me. Not even a happy birthday, Vela. No mention. No acknowledgement. My name wasn't even tagged. I stared at the screen for a few seconds too long, until the edges blurred and my eyes began to sting. Then my grip loosened, and the phone slid off my fingers and hit the couch with a soft thud. I didn't pick it up. I sat there, cross-legged on the couch, the weight of that image sinking deep into my chest like concrete. I wasn't just forgotten, I was deliberately written out. They toasted to Sable with my money, under my name, and nobody even pretended to remember I existed. My throat felt tight, like I'd swallowed dust. I stared out the window. The street below was calm. A delivery truck rumbled past. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked twice, then stopped. The normalcy of the world outside felt like a cruel contrast to what was happening inside me. I tried to remember the last time someone in that group text had asked how I was doing. Really asked. Not in passing. Not just a segue into a request for help, I came up empty. My birthdays had always been quieter than Sable's. She was the one who had parties at roller rinks, themed cakes, matching balloons. I had dollar store cards and store-bought cupcakes. I used to tell myself I didn't mind, that the love was still there, just expressed differently. But love isn't supposed to erase you. I reached down for the phone, unlocked it again. Sable had just posted another story. This time, a boomerang of her spinning her keys in slow motion, overlaid with the caption, "Manifestation, alignment, blessings." As if my stolen savings were the universe rewarding her ambition. Then, as if the universe were mocking me, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Sable. I almost let it go to voicemail. But curiosity, mixed with a cocktail of numbness and nausea, made me answer. Her voice was bright, bubbly. "Hey you! Happy birthday, by the way." "I was gonna text, but Dad said you were probably working or something." "Working? Or something." "Thanks," I said flatly. She didn't notice my tone. Or maybe she did, but ignored it. Anyway, I just wanted to say, I hope you're not mad. The car thing happened kind of fast. It was a whole vibe. Dad really came through. I stayed silent. She kept going. You know how hard I've been trying to build my brand. This was like the push I needed. Dad said it was just sitting in that account anyway, and honestly, she paused, and then it came. You've always been Dad's little wallet. Don't act new. That sentence hit harder than any bank notification. It came so casually, like she was telling me the sky was blue. Dad's little wallet. I didn't hang up. I didn't speak. I just sat there and listened to the echo of those words in my head. She laughed lightly, sensing the awkwardness, then added, You good? I ended the call. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. My hands weren't shaking this time. There was no panic, just a sharp clarity, like a sheet of ice snapping under your feet, not suddenly, but because it was already cracked. I took the glass to my small dining table, opened my laptop, and pulled up my budget sheet again. Then I opened a blank page. Financial entanglements, I typed in bold at the top. Below it, I began to list everything, every shared account, every subscription, every utility I'd ever put my name on to help out over the years. The Netflix account Sable still used, the phone line Dad never paid for, the gas bill under my name for the house I hadn't lived in since college. I wasn't just a wallet, I was a full-fledged system of support, and they were bleeding me dry, but not anymore. By the time the sun began to rise, I had 4 pages of notes, account numbers, and contact info. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt ready. I closed my laptop and whispered aloud to the stillness around me. This ends with me. The house was still. I'd finally turned off the lights around 5 in the morning, though I never really slept. I just laid there in the half-dark, watching headlights skim across my ceiling through the blinds, replaying Sable's voice again and again. Her words didn't even sound cruel, just casual, like they'd been baked into her vocabulary for years. You've always been Dad's little wallet, as if that was a role, as if I had ever signed up for it. I kicked off the covers around 6:30, padded barefoot to the kitchen, and made coffee. Not because I wanted it, I just needed to hear something boiling, needed to remind myself I was awake, and this wasn't some kind of fever dream. While the coffee percolated, I opened my laptop and clicked back to my savings account. Still empty. The red text hadn't magically disappeared overnight. I stared at it for a beat, then opened a new browser tab and typed in my bank's full transaction history, digging deeper. At first, I looked for that one charge, the one for the car, but then I started noticing something else. Small withdrawals, recurring names, charges that didn't register at the time but now made my gut twist. A transfer for $2,200 on the week I'd gotten promoted. Another for $950 around the time I'd finished night school. The dates weren't random. They matched with moments I'd been celebrating, moments I thought were mine. Each line felt like a pinprick, but I kept scrolling. Each one chipped away a little more of what I thought I knew. And then there it was, a monthly withdrawal to a name I didn't recognize, going back almost 2 years. I copied the name, ran it through a basic search, and up popped an LLC, a shell business tied to an old P.O. box that Sable had used once when she tried dropshipping for a month after watching a YouTube course. I hadn't thought about that phase of hers in years. Turns out I'd been the one funding it. I leaned back in my chair, the coffee now cold beside me. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't a one-time misstep. This was a pattern. And I'd been too focused on holding everything together to see the leaks forming under my feet. And the worst part? They weren't hiding it. I grabbed my phone to text my cousin Truett. He was the quiet one in the family, kept his head down, worked with his hands, always stayed on the sidelines during drama. I didn't expect a response right away, so I set it down and went to wash my face. By the time I returned, there was a message waiting. Truett. Hey, saw the photos on Facebook. Sorry, V. Me. What photos? A minute later, the image loaded. It was Sable again, this time in a white suit with gold heels, standing in front of a red ribbon stretched across the entrance of a small retail space in the new commercial park near East 14th Street. My dad stood beside her with giant scissors, mid-snip. A few women in matching branded shirts clapped from behind them. The banner above them read, Sable Lifestyle, a movement begins. Beneath the image was a caption written by Sable. This launch has been a dream for years. Couldn't have done it without my biggest supporter, Dad. Our family's belief in vision and purpose made this happen. Here's to legacy building. Legacy. I didn't even remember the last time I'd seen her fold her own laundry, let alone build a legacy. I didn't reply to Truett. I just stared at the photo for a long time. So that's where my money had gone. Not to a car, not to a job interview, not to an emergency. It had funded a branding launch, a press event, custom shirts and balloons and catered finger foods. That ribbon probably cost more than my groceries that week. I downloaded the image. Then I opened a Word doc and began pasting in the bank screenshots. I wasn't sure what I would do with all this yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to forget it. Not this time. Every time before, I'd made excuses, told myself they needed help, that family looked out for each other, that maybe, just maybe, I was overreacting. But there was no misreading this. They were building Sable's brand on my back, my years, my labor, and no one had even asked. I opened my printer and fed it fresh paper. The whirring sound felt strangely satisfying, like something solid was finally coming out of all this noise. As the pages rolled out, I labeled a manila folder, Evidence. Not because I planned to sue anyone, not yet, but because for the first time, I felt like I was the one in control, not begging for explanations, not hoping for apologies, just watching, documenting, preparing. I'd spent years treating these wounds like private matters, like secrets I should keep because airing them would make things worse, but the silence wasn't protecting me, it was protecting them. I glanced at the last printed page, a shot of Dad holding the ceremonial scissors, grinning like a local politician. I whispered to myself, "You knew exactly what you were doing." Then I turned off the printer, stood up, and went to grab another cup of coffee, this time hot. By Thursday morning, I had compiled nearly everything, every shared account, every automatic bill, every forgotten payment method I'd let them attach to my name just until things stabilized. I hadn't realized just how many ways I'd allowed myself to be used until I tried to untangle it all. The spreadsheet in front of me looked like something an accountant would wince at. My name was on their cable, their electric bill, a Hulu subscription I hadn't used in years, 2 phone lines, one of which hadn't been active since my mom's sister moved back from Arizona, but had somehow never been removed. I kept scrolling, writing down passwords, customer service numbers, dates I needed to call. I wasn't angry while doing it. I wasn't even upset anymore. I was focused. I worked in finance. I'd handled multi-million-dollar audits for corporate clients. But my own family? That was the one file I'd never dared open until now. The following Sunday, I headed over to Aunt Cheryl's house for one of those big backyard barbecues she threw every other month. She was always generous with her food and her opinions. Family came from all over, cousins, second cousins, kids in grass-stained shirts chasing each other with juice boxes. I brought a store-bought pie and my best poker face. Sable was already there when I arrived. Her white Jeep, wrapped in her new business logo, was parked out front. Sable Lifestyle, in sleek cursive across the back window, with her Instagram handle underneath. It looked expensive. Not just the car, but the wrap job too. Someone had put real money behind it. Inside, she was holding court near the grill, wearing oversized sunglasses and talking about audience engagement with a cousin who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Dad was in the corner with a beer, feet propped up, acting like the godfather of this whole operation. I kept my distance. I wasn't there for confrontation, not yet. I was watching, observing, gathering. The gathering picked up. Kids ran around, someone passed around potato salad, and someone else brought out a tray of ribs. I had just settled into one of the folding chairs near the back fence when Uncle Brad, a man who'd barely said 3 words to me in the past year, walked over with a plastic cup and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey, kiddo," he said, nudging me playfully. "Heard about the new ride. That's some real support you're giving your sister. At least you're useful, even if you're the youngest." The word hit harder than he probably intended. Useful. Like I was a wrench in a toolbox. Like my value existed only in what I could provide, not in who I was. A few others nearby chuckled politely. No one noticed my silence. I smiled, nodded, and excused myself to the cooler to grab a soda I didn't even want. Behind my sunglasses, my jaw clenched so tight I thought I might break a molar. They didn't see it. The disrespect was woven into their language, into how they looked at me, how they laughed. As the afternoon faded into early evening, I left quietly. No dramatic exits, no tearful speeches. I just slipped away. The following Tuesday, I got the mail on my lunch break. Tucked between a few coupons and a bank statement was a thick envelope with a glossy insurance logo on the front. I thought it might be junk, but the name on the return address was familiar, one of the insurers I'd used years ago for renters coverage. Inside, I found a packet of documents: auto insurance, policy summary, confirmation of co-ownership. And right there, in black ink, it was listed: Vehicle, 2024. Jeep, Grand Cherokee primary owner, Sable, Delroy, co-owner, primary payer, Vela Greer. Address of record, my apartment. I froze. I flipped the pages, scanning for any indication this was a mistake. A mix-up. A cruel joke, but it was all there. My address. My name. Even a signature. One I never wrote, but so closely resembled mine that I had to hold it up to the light. It was forged. They didn't just use my money. They used my identity. My brain kicked into overdrive. I thought about my credit report, about liability, about what would happen if Sable got into an accident. Would I be responsible? Would I be dragged into legal hell over a car I never authorized? The panic started to rise, but I shut it down. No more reacting. No more crying in kitchens. I was done letting this family bulldoze over my future with fake apologies and platitudes about blood ties. I laid the documents flat and took photos with my phone. Then I scanned them into my laptop, added them to the evidence folder I had started last week. This wasn't just betrayal, it was identity fraud. And it was personal. I opened another tab on my browser and pulled up my credit report. Then I ran a full background check on my name. I wanted to see every account tied to me, every suspicious mark, every name that might have used mine to skate through a system. I stayed up for hours that night, combing through statements, making notes, highlighting patterns. I cross-referenced every charge and every account name. It felt like conducting an autopsy on my own financial trust. Then I opened a blank email. I stared at the to line for a moment, then typed in my father's number and hit send. We need to talk. In person. Tomorrow. No excuses. Then I scrolled through my phone, opened the family group chat, the same thread that had once held baby photos, Thanksgiving invites, and birthday wishes from years ago, and pressed leave conversation. My finger hovered for a second, then I tapped delete. Gone. I didn't flinch. That night, I lay in bed listening to the wind brushing against my window. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I made a promise to myself. Next time I see him, I won't bring silence. I'll bring truth. I parked 2 houses down, not out of fear, just calculation. I didn't want Sable or Dad watching from the window, keeping tabs on my arrival like I was a late guest to a party they didn't really invite me to. It was early evening, that eerie, in-between hour when the sun hangs low and everything looks gold, but feels cold. As I walked toward the front steps, I reminded myself to breathe. Not deep yoga breaths, just enough to keep from clenching my jaw so hard my ears rang. I'd promised myself I'd stay calm, civil, focused. But the moment Dad opened the door and grinned like he didn't owe me anything, I knew that wasn't going to last. "Vela," he said, like I was someone he ran into at the grocery store. "You look tired. You working too hard again?" I stepped inside. The living room was neat, falsely warm, fake wood floors. That same old beige couch with the throw pillows Mom bought from Kohl's after the divorce. Sable sat curled in one corner of it, phone in hand, pretending not to notice me until Dad gave her a pointed glance. "Oh, hey, V," she chirped. "Didn't know you were coming over." I didn't respond. Dad motioned to the dining table like it was a negotiation room. "Let's sit. I figure you've got questions." He said it as if we were about to casually review a dinner bill, not the theft of my financial autonomy. I didn't sit. I'm not here to chat, I said. I want to know why my name is on an insurance policy for a car I didn't buy, didn't approve, and didn't sign for. Sable shifted on the couch. It all happened really fast. Dad and I, well, we didn't think it would be a big deal. You always help. Dad cut in, voice flat. Your family. That's what family does. That's not what family does, I said. That's what scammers do. Sable gasped theatrically. Wow, okay, that's a little much. She stood up, placing a hand over her heart like someone accused of a felony in a courtroom drama. We didn't mean anything malicious. I just needed something reliable for the business launch. And it's not like you're broke. My nails dug into the soft leather of my wallet, still clenched in my hand. I'm not your investor, Sable, and I'm sure as hell not your collateral. Her lips tightened, but she didn't reply. Instead, she turned to Dad. Maybe you should explain it to her, she said, tone suddenly syrupy. She always listens to you. He sighed like I was exhausting. It's done now. No sense tearing each other apart over paperwork. You committed fraud, I said, voice steady but sharper than I intended. You forged my signature, listed me as a co-owner, and tied my name to a debt I didn't agree to. Dad leaned back in the chair, eyebrows raised. You're being dramatic again. And there it was. That word again, dramatic. The gaslight of choice in this family. The way they'd always diffused my anger, my concern, my voice. Not this time. I've already contacted my lawyer, I said. This isn't just a family issue. It's legal. And if you think I'm bluffing, try me. Sable's phone buzzed. She picked it up and stared at the screen for a moment before looking back at me. Her face softened into something performative. Foila, she said, tears suddenly welling in her eyes like they'd been waiting backstage. Please, don't do this. You'll tear everything apart. It's already torn. You really want to embarrass the whole family over this? She whispered. Over a misunderstanding? That misunderstanding cost me $72,000, I snapped. And now it might cost me my credit, my home, my future. She blinked, then looked away. Her tears didn't fall. Dad stood up. Okay, enough. His voice was louder now, firm like he was closing a deal. You've made your point, but you're not going to drag us through court. You know why? Because you care too much. You always have. He said it like it was a weakness. And for years, it was. But not anymore. I turned without another word and walked out. That night, back at my apartment, I found an email waiting for me. From Sable. No greeting, no apology. Just a PDF attachment labeled Payment Agreement. The file opened to reveal a forged promissory note. My name, my signature, my agreement to cover the costs of the car for the sake of the business. It even had a date stamp from 2 months prior, before any of this had even started. Beneath it was a single sentence. Let's keep this civil, or we'll have to make it official. My hands shook, not with fear, but with fury. This wasn't guilt-tripping anymore. This was extortion. This was a threat from someone who believed, truly, that I'd fold because I was the nice one. The peacemaker, the wallet. I closed the file, attached it to a new folder, and backed it up in 3 locations. Then I picked up my keys and drove to Mora's. My aunt lived alone in a small house at the edge of town. She was the only one in the family who'd never asked for money, never blamed me for saying no, and never made excuses for Conrad. She opened the door before I even knocked. I figured you'd come, she said, stepping aside. I sat down at her kitchen table. She poured us tea. No questions. No small talk. After I told her everything, she disappeared into her study and came back with a worn folder, the kind you only keep if you know someday you'll need it. Inside were tax records, emails, and 2 letters from another cousin, Cameron, who'd cut off contact with the family 5 years ago after a loan dispute no one had ever explained. He gave your father access to one joint account, Mora said softly. Next thing he knew, his savings were gone. It took him years to recover, but he never fought back, just vanished. I stared at the papers. It wasn't just me. I wasn't the first. Maura reached over and touched my hand. Don't fight them loud. Fight them smart. I nodded slowly, feeling something deep inside of me lock into place. By the time I left her house, the stars were out, and my mind was no longer spinning. It was calculating. That night, I opened a new document. I listed every legal avenue, every step, every name. Then I saved it under a new title, Recovery. He didn't say a word when I walked in, just gestured toward the garage with his chin and led the way. No hello, no how have you been? Not that I expected it, not anymore. The air inside the garage was still musty. Concrete dust, old motor oil, maybe a trace of the paint thinner he used to tinker with when I was little. It smelled exactly like it had when I was 8 years old sitting on that old stool, watching him fix a mower we didn't really need. Now that same stool was gone, replaced with a stack of boxes and a plastic lawn chair. He stepped inside first and pulled the door shut behind us with a sharp click. Then he turned, all calm swagger. You came alone, he said. Good. I didn't answer. He leaned back against the workbench, arms folded. So, you're mad. I get it. But this huff you're in, it's not going to get you anywhere. You think you're the only one in this family who's ever sacrificed something? Still, I didn't say a word. Just reached into my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. I held it out. You can read it or not, but it's the truth. He didn't take it. Is this about the damn car again? He said, tone already rising. Jesus, Vela, you act like we killed someone. Your sister needed help. You had the money. What's the real problem? I stepped forward. My voice didn't waver. The problem is you forged my name. You used my address. You listed me as a co-owner without consent, tied my credit to something I didn't even know about. He finally took the envelope, snatched it really, and flipped it open, pulled out the copy of the insurance document, my forged signature staring back at us both. He let out a scoff. You're blowing this out of proportion. Nobody's going to come after you. You act like this was some criminal act. It was, I said. And I'm not letting it slide. He tossed the papers onto the workbench like they were junk mail. You think this makes you better than us? You and your spreadsheets and your smart mouth? You don't get to stand there and act like you're above the family. We did what we had to. I didn't have to be involved, I said. And you made me part of it without asking. He took a step closer. His eyes narrowed. You talk about this to anyone. I swear, I'll make sure you regret it. You want to blow this up? Fine. But you won't be part of this family when it's over. Then he added with a voice that dropped half an octave, You go to a lawyer, I'll bury you. Don't think I won't. That's when I felt it, that old flicker of fear that used to crawl up my spine when he raised his voice in the kitchen, when he'd slam cabinets just loud enough for it to be a warning, when he'd stare without blinking until Mom stepped between us. But this time, something shifted. I wasn't 8 anymore. I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and held it up. I recorded everything you just said, I told him. It's already backed up and sent to my attorney and to Maura. So if you want to bury me, you'd better dig deep, because you'll need to climb out first. His face turned a shade of red I hadn't seen in years. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I kept going. You made a choice. You and Sable both. You thought I'd panic, that I'd fold like I always did. But I'm done cleaning up your messes. I'm not your bank. I'm not your backup plan. And I'm certainly not your scapegoat. I stepped around him toward the garage door, hand already on the latch. You said I wasn't family anymore. For the first time, I actually agree. I walked out. No yelling, no door slamming, no tears, just the crisp sound of my heels hitting the driveway. When I got back to my car, I took a deep breath, not to calm down, but to reset. Then I sent the audio recording to my lawyer. I copied it to a secure cloud drive. I sent a backup to Maura, just in case. I even wrote myself a note. If he tries anything else, you already have the truth. That night, I didn't drink wine or cry in the shower. I didn't call a friend and unload. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, One tab for my lawyer, one tab for my credit report. Then I started shutting it all down, line by line. I canceled the gas bill tied to their house, removed myself from every joint subscription, transferred my cell plan to a solo account, sent notice to the auto insurance company that the forged document was under investigation, even froze my credit just to be safe. Every keystroke felt like a lock clicking shut behind me, not to trap me, but to protect me. Around midnight, I pulled out an old notebook from college, back when I still believed getting a degree would be the hardest part of adulthood. On the first clean page, I wrote in capital letters, Phase 1, complete. Below it, I made a new list. People to block, utilities to update, passwords to change. I'd spent my life being useful, the helper, the fixer. But they didn't want me around unless I was useful. And now, they'd lost that privilege. I glanced at my phone one last time. A few missed calls from Sable, one from a cousin who hadn't spoken to me in months. I powered the phone down. Then I sat back in my chair, exhaled, and whispered into the quiet apartment. He said I wasn't family anymore. Good. The invitation came in the form of a group text from Aunt Cheryl. BBQ this Saturday, usual time, family, food, fun, don't forget your chairs. I stared at it for a full minute. No mention of what happened, no word from Dad, nothing from Sable, just a cheerful emoji and the assumption that I'd show up like everything was normal. It had been a week since I confronted my father in the garage. 7 full days without a word from either of them. I hadn't expected an apology, but I thought I might get some kind of retaliation, a call, a guilt trip, maybe even a veiled threat. But there was only silence, which was its own kind of answer. Saturday rolled in humid and cloudless. By 2 p.m., the smell of charcoal was already drifting down the block. I drove past the row of parked cars lining the curb and found a spot near the corner, not too close, not too far. The backyard was already full when I walked in, folding tables lined with mismatched tablecloths, a few kids playing tag with juice boxes, Uncle Ray manning the grill like he was preparing for the 4th of July. There was laughter, music from someone's Bluetooth speaker, and the faint clink of ice in red Solo cups. Sable was standing under a pop-up canopy, wearing white denim and giant sunglasses, posing for selfies with 2 of our cousins. The Sable Lifestyle logo was stitched into the back of her blouse, like she was her own walking billboard. Dad stood beside the cooler, beer in hand, laughing too loudly at something someone said. He looked relaxed, confident, untouched. I didn't go over to them. Instead, I made a slow lap around the food table, nodded to the aunts, waved at a couple second cousins, and settled into a seat near the far edge of the yard. Quiet but visible. For the next 20 minutes, I just watched. They were talking about her again. Someone brought up the car, then the store opening, then how proud Dad must be to have raised such an entrepreneurial spirit. There were a few toasts with lemonade. One uncle even said, "Family builds family. That's how we do things around here." I almost laughed. That's when I stood up. No announcement, no clearing of the throat. I just reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I tapped once. The audio started playing loud and clear. His voice. "You talk about this to anyone. I'll bury you. You won't be part of this family when it's over." The laughter stopped. A plastic fork dropped onto a paper plate. Someone's kid tripped and started crying in the background, but no one moved to help. All eyes turned to Dad. He froze. Sable stepped forward, panic in her eyes, lips parted like she was about to object. But it was too late. The recording continued. I watched faces shift. Confusion turned to discomfort. The kind of tension you feel at funerals when someone says what everyone else is too scared to admit. By the time it ended, I'd already tucked the phone back in my bag. I didn't look at anyone. I didn't need to. Sable stammered. Why would you do that here?" I met her gaze, steady. "Why did you do it at all?" She blinked, stunned into silence. Dad opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Not a defense, not an apology, not even anger, just silence. I left. Drove home with the windows down, one hand on the wheel, the other drumming against my thigh in rhythm with the music on the radio. The breeze felt different, not lighter exactly, but clearer. When I got home, I changed into sweatpants and pulled my laptop onto the couch with me. I opened the folder I'd labeled Disentangle, and I began cutting every tie. Phone plan? Cancelled. Streaming services? Logged out. Passwords changed. Joint credit card that only I paid for? Closed. I called the bank, froze my credit, and filed an identity fraud report on the forged insurance documents. Then I drafted an email to my lawyer asking to move forward with removing my name from any legal responsibility tied to the car loan. It took 2 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I moved, like a surgeon. Precise, unshaking. After I finished, I sat back and watched the cursor blink in the email to Maura. Sent. The next morning, the text started. One from Sable. I can't believe you humiliated us in front of the whole family. Then another. You need to apologize to Dad. That was disgusting. Followed by a third from a cousin I hadn't spoken to since high school. You didn't have to go nuclear. That was wrong. But then there were others. From people who had never said a word before. I always knew something was off. Good for you. It's about time someone said it. I didn't respond to any of them. I wasn't looking for a parade. I was building a boundary. And for the first time, it felt like it might actually hold. By noon, the group chat had gone quiet. I imagined the phone calls happening in the background, the whispers, the shifting alliances, Sable's tears, real or not. Dad pacing in his backyard, wondering what to do now that I wasn't playing along. They didn't think I'd actually walk away. But now? They were the ones locked out. It took less than a month for the dominoes to fall. One Tuesday morning, while I was pouring my second cup of coffee, my attorney called. The forged documents had been officially submitted to the Financial Fraud Division, not just as a civil complaint, but for full legal review. They had everything, the audio, the signatures, the timestamps. It's in their hands now, she said. You did everything right. I thanked her, hung up, and stood in my kitchen for a moment, listening to the hum of the fridge. It wasn't victory I felt. It wasn't relief either. It was certainty. Later that day, during a break between client calls, I opened Instagram to check a post from a small business I followed. And there it was, a screenshot posted by someone I didn't recognize, showing Sable's Jeep, my Jeep, as far as the loan paperwork was concerned, being lifted onto a flatbed tow truck in the middle of a sunny strip mall parking lot. You could see the custom wrap peeling at the corner, like her branding couldn't quite hold up under real pressure. The caption read, "Influencer or illusion?" In the comments, people were tagging her, asking what happened. Some were defending her. Others weren't so kind. She didn't reply. By the next day, the post was gone, but screenshots had already made their rounds. One was reposted in a Facebook moms group from our town. Another made it into a private Reddit thread. The word fraud started floating around. Quiet, not trending, but present. I didn't add fuel to it. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to. The truth was working without me. That same week, I got an email from my bank confirming that a co-borrower's credit rating had triggered a review on the loan I'd been tied to. The result? My name was cleared. The fraud flag stayed on the file, but I was no longer liable. I exhaled, slow and long, and then forwarded that email to Maura with a single line. We're getting there. 2 days later, I was coming out of a hardware store. Nothing exciting, just a couple hooks and picture frames for the hallway, when I spotted them, Sable and Dad. They weren't arguing, they weren't shopping, they were just walking. No car, no shopping bags. Just the two of them, side by side on the cracked sidewalk, both looking a little smaller than I remembered. He noticed me first. Our eyes met across the parking lot. He stiffened. His jaw moved like he was about to say something, but he didn't. Sable looked too, but she dropped her gaze almost instantly, like the pavement was suddenly fascinating. I didn't wave. I didn't stop. I walked right past them, my keys jangling in my hand, head held high. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the one being left behind. Later that evening, I received a text from my neighbor Debbie, who always knew more than anyone else in the zip code. Debbie, saw your sister working at the car wash by the highway. She was wiping down a Dodge Charger, didn't look too happy. Followed by another. Debbie, your dad filed for social assistance. You probably already know, but thought you'd want to hear it from someone neutral. I stared at the messages. No smugness, no satisfaction, just a deep, bittersweet ache. They had made their choices, and so had I. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked around my apartment. The walls were still a little bare, no gallery wall, no trendy wallpaper, but it was mine, every inch, paid for with my own work, my own name, and no one else's signature forged on the paperwork. I stood up, went to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter. They didn't just lose access to my money, they lost access to me, to my time, to my kindness, to the decades I'd given, believing that love meant giving more than you had. Now, love meant protecting myself, and finally, I had. I went back to the hallway, pulled out the picture frames I bought earlier that day, and started placing photos inside. Not of them, not of birthdays or barbecues where I smiled through my teeth. Just me, graduation, my first consulting check, a candid shot of Maura and me laughing over coffee last Thanksgiving, and a blank frame, waiting for something new. I hung them in a line above my hallway table, stepped back, and let the silence fill the space between the clicks of the leveler in my hand. There were no apologies coming. No, I didn't mean to voicemails. No letter in the mail from Dad saying he'd messed up. And I didn't need one. Because the peace I'd built wasn't made from forgiveness. It was made from freedom. 6 months passed like they always do, not in big moments, but in quiet ones. Folding laundry in the living room while a podcast played in the background, making grocery lists that didn't include other people's favorites. Logging into my online banking without holding my breath. It was fall now. Leaves turned burnt orange across the small park I passed on my morning walks. My new place was tucked in a modest condo development on the edge of Des Moines. Quiet, unassuming, and finally, fully mine. I'd painted the walls soft gray, bought a new couch that fit the space, hung up art that made me smile. And best of all, no one else had a key. I hadn't spoken to my father or Sable since the day I walked past them on the sidewalk. No calls, no texts, no letters. At first, it rattled me. That old part of me still clinging to some kind of closure, some miracle of remorse. But therapy helped, slowly. My therapist, Anita, who reminded me of a sharper version of Mara, never tried to fix me. She just asked the right questions. When did you first feel responsible for their happiness? I answered without thinking. 16. Mom was crying over a shut-off notice. I paid it with my paycheck from the diner. Anita nodded and let the silence work. Now I didn't owe anyone an explanation. If someone asked about my parents or my sister, I told them the truth, simply and cleanly. We're not close. If they probed, I'd say, it's a boundary I had to set. No drama, no justifications. And that was the beauty of it. My silence was no longer fear, it was choice. My job shifted too. I left the bank and started working as a remote financial consultant, small businesses, independent contractors, women who wanted to escape financial dependence but didn't know where to start. I built them spreadsheets that weren't just about numbers, they were about freedom. One of them sent me a handwritten note. You didn't just clean up my books, you helped me believe I could start again. I framed it, and then, just like that, it was my birthday again. It fell on a Thursday. I didn't take the day off, but I blocked out a quiet 2-hour window between meetings. Just enough time for lunch, a walk, maybe a little reflection. No texts came, not from Dad, not from Sable, but I didn't expect them anymore. And for the first time, I didn't feel the ache of their absence. I just noticed it, like the echo of a sound that used to be familiar but hadn't rung in so long, you forgot what it felt like to hear it. Around 3 p.m., Maura showed up. She knocked twice, soft but sure, and walked in holding a paper bag from the bakery near my place and 2 coffees. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," she said, setting the bag on my kitchen counter. Inside was a small lemon cake, Simple, no inscription, just one candle already tucked in the box. Thought we could light it, she added. You don't have to make a wish. We sat at my table. I lit the candle. She didn't sing. Neither did I. We just looked at the soft flicker for a moment, then blew it out together. After she left, I cleaned up the plates, rinsed the mugs, and sat down at my desk. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, and sent a donation to a nonprofit that supports survivors of financial abuse. It wasn't a large sum, just enough to matter. Enough to say, you're not alone. In the donation note, I wrote, in honor of finally choosing myself. Later that night, I checked social media. Just briefly. Sable hadn't posted in weeks. Dad's profile had gone private. A few mutuals had quietly unfollowed me. Others hadn't noticed at all. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't triumphant. I was simply free. People in the community knew what had happened. No one said it out loud, but I felt it in their glances, in the way conversations paused when I entered a room. Some looked at me with quiet respect. Some avoided eye contact altogether. Conrad and Sable didn't face any formal charges. But the damage had been done. Their credibility, gone. Their reputations, muted. They didn't show their faces at community events anymore. And if they did, people kept a polite distance. As for me, I didn't gloat. I built, day by day, bit by bit. My heart still ached sometimes, especially on holidays. When I walked past families gathered around park benches or heard someone casually mention their mom bringing over soup. But the ache didn't control me. It reminded me I was human. That loss doesn't have to come with noise. Sometimes it comes quietly, settles in your bones, and teaches you to hold space for grief and growth at the same time. Around midnight, I closed my laptop after wrapping up a client budget review. I leaned back in my chair, stared at the quiet glow of my apartment, and whispered aloud to no one in particular. They'll never say sorry, but I'm done waiting for that to mean anything. Sometimes, the loudest form of love is learning to say no. This story wasn't just about money. It was about boundaries, respect, and reclaiming your worth. Not everyone who shares your blood shares your values. And walking away from a toxic family doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've finally chosen peace over permission. Have you ever had to set a boundary that changed everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real, powerful family stories that speak the truth we're all learning to live with.